Anniversary by Ted Hughes was written sometime in the early 1990s and was first published in his collection New and Selected Poems 1957 to 1994. In this autobiographical poem, the anniversary of the title refers to the 13th of May, the day of his mother Edith's passing in 1969. On this day every year, he envisions her strolling through the eternal Sunday morning of the afterlife with her sister Miriam, who died at the age of 18 years, at her side. Hughes blends vivid imagery with cosmic elements to depict their unearthly forms. As Edith recounts significant life events, symbolizing her enduring and inextricably linked maternal love, sorrow, and sacrifice, Hughes reflects on memory, grief, guilt, and complex family dynamics. He reveals not only that being loved can be a burden as well as a blessing, but also his belief that his mother favoured his brother over him, thus complicating his memories of love for her with feelings of resentment. The poem explores themes of the persistence of memory, the passage of time, and the emotional complexity and conflict of family bonds. Hughes often drew on personal experiences and emotions related to his family in his work. He adored his mother, and the women in his family had a significant impact on his emotional and spiritual development. His mother, in particular, provided a strong connection to nature and a deep sense of place, ideas which crop up repeatedly in his poetry. In his autobiographical essay The Rock, from his collection Winter Pollen, Occasional Prose, Hughes recounts his mother's description of her sister Miriam as someone with an intense, fiery nature who would, after her death, appear to her in visions, made of flame and covered in many coloured feathers of soft, pouring flame. This striking image is central to the poem and to the way in which the pair appear to him in his vision. Hughes also refers to his brother Gerald in the poem. The brothers spent their early life in the Yorkshire countryside, and this exposure to nature had a lasting impact on both of them. While its power, brutality, and unpredictability had a more cerebral effect on Ted, informing his approach to his poetry, its influence on Gerald made him lead a life that was largely centred around practical outdoors activities, such as gamekeeping and hunting, skills that his mother admired. There is more than a suggestion in the poem that Hughes's belief that his mother favoured Gerald because of this caused him a degree of pain and resentment. We must note, however, that these memories and reflections are subjective. They can only be taken on board in terms of how Hughes felt about his relationship with his mother and hers with his brother, and do not necessarily reflect the actual state of affairs. The poem comprises 6 stanzas of 5, 9, 28, 10, 3, and 3 lines respectively. It is written in free verse, which means that it has neither a fixed metrical or rhythmic structure, nor a set rhyme scheme. It is written in the first person, I, and the present tense, e.g. grows and see, which not only makes it highly personal, but also gives it a sense of immediacy, as though Hughes is writing the poem at the same time as he is experiencing the vision. Hughes's later work, especially that focusing on relationships, of which this poem is an example, tends to have a more direct, less lyrically complex style if we compare it to the rich, dense language of his earlier nature poetry. Rather than the use of inventive language such as neologisms, striking compound adjectives, and intricate sound patterning, Hughes's later poetry has a much more conversational tone. Not only is there extensive use of enjambment and caesura throughout, which mimics the rise and fall of natural speech, but there is also less of the dense symbolic layering that is a hallmark of his nature poetry. This shift in style likely reflects the deeply personal and confessional nature of this later work, as his poems turn inward to deal with complex emotions, memory, and grief. As a result, the directness of the language seems to reflect the emotional transparency and the burden of the personal history that he carried. The one-word title, Anniversary, suggests a reflection on the passage of time and the marking of significant moments, often linked to memory and loss. In the context of the poem, it evokes a sense of recurrence, where past events, relationships, or emotional experiences resurface in the present. An anniversary can signify both celebration and mourning, and in Hughes's work it often implies the ongoing influence of the past on the present, underscoring themes of remembrance, continuity, and the cyclical nature of life and death. The poem begins on a striking, fantastical image. My mother, in her feathers of flame, grows taller. The surrealness of the image immediately suggests that this can only be a vision, as his mother appears to him as some kind of fiery creature with wings, such as a bird or an angel. Note the alliteration of the fricative f sound in feathers of flame here, which Hughes perhaps uses to evoke the sound of the flames as they flicker and flare, enhancing the imagery of movement and intensity through the soft yet simultaneously forceful quality of the repeated consonant. The way in which she grows taller in his mind's eye suggests that she becomes increasingly vivid as she makes her presence known. This vision, it seems, is as regular as clockwork. Every May 13th I see her with her sister Miriam. It is a memory triggered by a simple action. I lift the torn-off diary page where my brother jotted, "Ma died today," and there they are. Note the use of the adjective torn off to suggest that Hughes removed the page from the diary at the end of the year because it was too precious to discard, filled as it was with symbolic rather than intrinsic value. The verb jotted, however, evokes the almost casual nature in which his mother's death was recorded by his brother. Hughes seems to be subtly suggesting here the difference between his own sentimental reaction to his mother's death and his brother's, which was perhaps much more practical and pragmatic. The second stanza now focuses on the vision itself, as Hughes evokes an idyllic image of the afterlife, where his late mother has been reunited with her sister. She is now as tall as Miriam. In the perpetual Sunday morning of everlasting, they are strolling together. The adjective perpetual means never ending, and Sunday morning is associated with a time of peace, serenity, and reflection. The verb strolling evokes the action of going for a leisurely walk that is taken purely for its own sake. He imagines the pair of women at one with nature, listening to the larks ringing in their orbits. In literature and poetry, the skylark has been particularly celebrated for its distinctively joyous and uplifting song, which is often seen as a symbol of hope, freedom, and inspiration. An orbit is the curved path of a celestial object around a star, a planet, or a moon. In other words, these birds are singing as they wheel, soar, and swoop around them in the sky. The verb ringing suggests the way in which this beautiful song seems to reverberate around them, perhaps like a chorus of angels. Not only are the pair in harmony with a very terrestrial kind of nature, but they are also at one with the universe, as the feathers in which they are decked are alive with and exude a cosmic energy. The work of the cosmos, creation and destruction of matter and of antimatter, pulses and flares, shudders and fades like the northern lights in their feathers. Here Hughes seems to be drawing a parallel between the natural phenomena of the cosmos and the ephemeral nature of human existence. The lines, the work of the cosmos, creation and destruction of matter and of antimatter, refers to the fundamental forces of the universe, where matter and antimatter are constantly being created and destroyed in a cosmic cycle. This could symbolize the broader cycle of life, death, and transformation in nature. Note the use of the simile in the lines, pulses and flares, shudders and fades like the northern lights in their feathers. The northern lights, or the aurora borealis, is a natural electrical phenomenon characterized by the appearance of streamers of reddish or greenish light in the sky near the North Pole. This light show, vividly evoked by the two pairs of verbs, pulses and flares, shudders and fades, is fleeting, beautiful, and ever-changing, its appearance and disappearance in the sky seeming to suggest the transient and delicate nature of this cycle of existence. The third stanza continues, "My mother is telling Miriam about her life, which was mine." Here we get the sense that Hughes felt that Edith lived her life vicariously through her children. Her voice comes piping down a deep gorge of woodland echoes. Hughes is totally immersed in this vision as his mother's voice reverberates around him. Note how he firmly places her in a natural setting. The verb piping describes singing or speaking in a high, shrill voice and is often used in relation to birds. This is consolidated by the image of a deep gorge of woodland echoes, which evokes the air being filled by the sound of birds as they sing and twitter in the trees. She is pointing out things and places to Miriam that are significant in that they are testimony to her life of service and sacrifice for her son. "This is the waterline dark on my dress, look, where I dragged him from the reservoir." This is a reference to an event which Hughes recalls in his autobiographical essay The Rock, where he had wandered too close to the edge of a reservoir and fallen in, with his mother managing to rescue him by wading in herself before he drowned. These actions would go on to reinforce her role as a protector and key figure in his life. The list continues, "And that is the horse on which I galloped through the brick wall and out over the heather, simply to bring him a new pen. This is the pen I laid on the altar." The overly dramatic language here to suggest that needing a new pen is some kind of emergency implies that Hughes feels a level of guilt that his mother seemed to drop everything at a moment's notice to be completely at his service at his slightest whim. The image of laying the pen on the altar underscores this feeling of sacrifice and seems to trigger another image of the mass marriages of him and his brother, where I was not once a guest. The use of the adjective mass here, meaning a large number, and given extra force by the nasal alliteration, is hyperbolic, as Hughes and his brother only married twice each, with Hughes's second marriage taking place after his mother's death. There is a suggestion here that Hughes feels guilty that his mother did not, for whatever reason, attend any of the marriages of her two sons. Note the use of polysyndeton, as her list of memories becomes a catalogue of Hughes's own careless and selfish behaviour. The image of her suddenly scattering the red coals with her fingers to find where I had fallen for the third time not only links to her description of being made of flame, but also suggests that Hughes finds these memories painful, as he remembers his mother once more being there to pick him up when he clumsily fell over for the umpteenth time. The way in which she laughs helplessly till she weeps is also perhaps an indication that Hughes felt his mother must have had conflicting emotions about the extent to which she dedicated her life to them. Meanwhile, Miriam, who died at 18, is Madonna-like with pure wonder to hear of all she missed. Hughes is perhaps alluding here to the Virgin Mary, specifically at the Annunciation, when she received the news with awe and wonder from the Archangel Gabriel that she was going to have a baby and that she was to name him Jesus. Hughes goes on to portray his mother as a person who spent a great deal of her life fretting about her offspring. The religious imagery continues as the metaphor rosary prayers of unending worry evokes the series of 66 prayers in the Catholic Church that are learnt by rote and are recited daily using a set of rosary beads as an aide-memoire. This image suggests that Edith's quasi-religious devotion to her children meant that her anxieties were many and that she would revisit the same ones over and over again. In another image, a simile this time, Hughes likens these worries to favourite items of clothing in a wardrobe that she would pick and choose to put on. Like pairs of shoes or one dress after another. This is the sort of thing, she is saying, I like to wear best. Both these images evoke the way in which Hughes felt that preoccupations about her children seemed to become a part of her identity, and that she appeared to take some kind of perverse enjoyment and sense of fulfilment from worrying. These preoccupations were such that, in Hughes's eyes, she became very passive. If her children weren't physically present, then he believes that she would spend her time thinking about them. Just the knowledge that they were out there in the world, simply existing, was enough for her. She continues with seemingly no sense of irony at all. Much of it, was simply sitting at the window watching the horizon. Truly wonderful it was, day after day, knowing they were somewhere. Edith now reveals that she watches over them and takes pleasure from it. It still is wonderful, she says, and she indicates that Miriam look at her son. Hughes's vision now takes on another dimension, as he is now no longer merely an observer, but also one who is being observed. And they pause on the brink of the starry dew. They are looking at me. Note how once again Hughes blends the cosmic and the terrestrial with the adjective starry to describe the dewdrops on the grass. He describes his mother as darker with her life, her red Indian hair, her skin so strangely olive and otherworldly. These lines are ambiguous, but it appears that the Edith of the vision appears different to how she looked in real life. She seems to have long straight black hair and a darker, more Mediterranean complexion, which is strangely olive and otherworldly, while Miriam is now sheer flame beside her. The pair are vibrant, exuding energy as their feathers throb softly, iridescent. The adjective iridescent means shimmering with colours that change when seen from different angles. Meanwhile, my mother's face is glistening as if she held it into the skyline wind looking towards me. It seems that Edith's face is wet from tears, as though looking towards her son has the same effect as looking straight into an oncoming wind, which makes your eyes water. I do this for her, Hughes wryly observes, i.e., I have this effect on her, as a note of resentment creeps in. He elaborates on this in the 5th stanza as he reveals the sibling rivalry between himself and his brother Gerald, and his belief that, deep down, she loved him more. She is using me to tune finer her weeping love for my brother, through mine. In other words, Hughes is accusing her here of using him as some kind of a proxy, as an instrument to perfect her much deeper emotional response to his brother. There is a suggestion through the image of Hughes as a shadow that he casts as she approaches, that he feels that her joy at seeing him is always tinged with a certain amount of disappointment that he is not his brother. The poem ends on a note of pathos, as Hughes recalls a moment when this was indeed the case. His sense of rejection is almost palpable in these lines. As when I came a mile over fields and walls towards her, and found her weeping for him, able for all that distance to think me him. In other words, unable to make him out clearly as he was approaching her through the countryside, she wanted to believe that it was Gerald and not Ted, with the disappointment when she realised her mistake, making her cry. In conclusion, Anniversary is a deeply reflective and personal exploration of memory, grief, and complex familial relationships. Through vivid and fantastical imagery, Hughes evokes the enduring presence of his mother and her sister Miriam in his mind, blending cosmic and earthly elements to express his emotional connection to them. The poem's title reinforces its central theme of the recurring influence of the past on the present, where memories resurface each year on the anniversary of his mother's death. Hughes's introspective and direct style in this later work allows for a poignant examination of the tensions between love, loss, and unresolved feelings of guilt and resentment, particularly regarding his perception of his mother's preference for his brother. Ultimately, the poem captures the cyclical nature of familial bonds, where love and conflict are inextricably linked, just as the past continuously shapes the present. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.